First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai Ba'Hashem Rakakudash. Yahweh is to this world ignorantly calls God. Yahushai is to this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Ba'Hashem means in the name, Rakah means spirit, and Kodash means holy. And that's all in the Paleo Hebrew. Also need to give double honors to the other bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. In today's video, I wanted to go into the understanding of Galatians 3 and 28. There is no difference between the Jew nor Greek. Okay, and this is a scripture that a lot of so-called Christians will use to try to imply that salvation is for all nations, when that is not simply true. Okay, that comes from a misunderstanding of a handful of scriptures, and one of those scriptures is this one right here. Okay, in Galatians 3 and 28, it says there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Hamashiach Yahushai. Right, and they'll use that scripture saying, see, there's no difference between the Jew and the Greek. Right, and where they go wrong is that they think that Greek means somebody that's a heathen, right? Somebody that's a non-Israelite, when that's simply not the fact. Okay, simply explaining what this is talking about. When it says Greek, okay, when it says there's no difference between the Jew nor a Gentile, it's talking about an Israelite that was in a Gentile state of mind. Okay, an Israelite that was in the Greek lifestyle, that was in the Greek state of mind, that grew up being a Greek. Okay, and the reason people don't understand this is because they do not read the Apocrypha. Okay, and the Apocrypha, okay, is, or was, or still is, in the 1611 King James Bible, but in today in your modern King James Bible, you're not going to find it. Okay, because it was taken away by a group called the Bible Destruction Group. Literally. And, you know, when you go into the book of Maccabees, First Maccabees, this gives you the breakdown, the understanding, the history of how the Israelites were made Greeks. And that's why it says there's no difference between the Jew nor Greek. So when you go into First Maccabees, actually, before I even go into that, I want to go into the word on this, the word on Greek. Okay, you go into that word Greek, it's the Greek word Helen, and it says, a Greek either by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies. In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. Now, I want to tell you how that's completely right, but not true at the same time. It is talking about those that made the language, customs, and learning of Greeks their own, but it's lying when it says that it's not Jews, right? That was strategically placed there for the masses not to get the understanding of what the Bible is really talking about. Okay, this applies to Jews, it applies to Israelites also, and this is the proof of how the Israelites were made Greeks. So when you go into First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 41, it says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers into Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. Okay, so the Israelites were scared. Okay, they were forced to follow the Greek lifestyle, or else they were put to death. And as it says, the whole point was that they would forget the law and change the ways of the Most High. And that's exactly what happened. Okay, these Israelites that grew up in the Greek lifestyle, after their sons and their sons and their sons grew up in that lifestyle. Okay, you had Israelites that all they knew was Greece. Okay, all they knew was exercising naked. Okay, all they knew was Hades. Okay, and Jupiter and, you know, all these Greek gods. So That's what it's talking about when you go into Juno or Greek. And that proves right here how this is not true. Okay, Jews, Israelites, were part of this. And that's what it's all about. Okay? The understanding was how now that the Messiah on the scene, there's no difference between the Israelite who knew who he was and the Israelite who didn't. Right? You can both be correct with the Father through the Son. And now it's primarily through faith. Right? Through faith, you're saved. Right now, it doesn't say that, you completely abolish the law. No, it breaks that clearly down in Romans chapter 3 and verse 30. It says that just because we are saved through faith, it doesn't mean, you disregard the law. You still establish it. So that's the understanding of having faith and keeping the commandments to the best of your ability. Okay, the best you can. Because we're going to fall. We're not perfect. And the points we fall, and that's where Yahawashi is exalted. So another point I want to get is, there's another scripture that says that, and it says, there's no difference between the Jew nor Gentile. Now, let's go to what is the definition of a Gentile. It says, a Gentile generally refers to someone who is not Jewish. Depending on the context, it describes belonging to the nations other than Israel, or serves as a term for an outsider to a specific religious group, right? Which really what it's saying is somebody that's not an Israelite. Okay, that word Jewish is new. Okay, it's made up. It's somebody that's not an Israelite. Now, the point about that is that Gentile has two definitions, right? You have a physical Gentile, which is somebody that's not an Israelite, and you have a spiritual Gentile, which is an Israelite in a Gentile state of mind, aka those Israelites in Greece. Now, a scripture to prove that is 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 1. It says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. Right? So, what does this show? It shows that at one point, these Israelites were considered Gentiles. Right? Ye were, meaning that at one point they were, but now they're not. And what was the distinguishing factor? The fact that they were following dumb idols. That's what got them in that Gentile state of mind. Right? And the reason I bring this out also is it proves that there's another definition to Gentile. Because if it was only the physical Gentile, you can't at one point be a Gentile, somebody that's not an Israelite, aka an Edomite, and then all of a sudden change to being an Israelite. Okay, that's not how it works. Okay, you are where your father is. You can't just switch, in the middle of your life. So it has to have a different understanding, a different definition. And this is the explanation. Spiritual Gentiles, because of following false idols, false gods. But as soon as they stopped that, they put off those Gentile state of ways, ultimately that changed. So I just wanted to go into a quick breakdown of that. This is something that confuses a lot of people, and it's very simple. All you need is this right here, the Apocrypha, which if you go into the 1611 King James Bible, okay, you go into the contents, you'll find this. You find, lo and behold, Wisdom of Solomon, Baruch, Bel and the Dragon, Maccabees. This is a picture, the Apocrypha, right? So it is part of the Bible. It has just been removed. So hopefully this is edifying. With that, and give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahawashi, Ba'ashem Makakodash, and double honors to the other bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to elect, shalom.